going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's the one and only James Williams Darkwaters, and I'm back. And this is a part of Bigfoot Weekend. I'm excited to have you guys on board with me. And if you've been listening to the content and you like what you've heard so far, make sure you hit the like button. If you're new, subscribe. If you're one of the people who are very, very new, because we're growing by about 1,000 people per day, make sure that you not only subscribe, but to each and every person who's been on this interview series and participated in this, make sure you go out and find their channels and subscribe. Look at the description. I'm gonna have a link to everyone who participated so you can show them some love. It's very important that we spread the love around this community. It reduces the competition and all the beef and all the strife and the drama if we all work together. With that being said, I have Jonny Two Bears on here with me today. We're going to have some conversation about the world of Bigfoot, specifically from a researcher's perspective. And if you guys don't know, there's a couple of angles that people target when you talk about research. There's researchers who like research by reading books and reading Facebook, and then there's field researchers, people who actually go out in the woods in the middle of the night and mess around where monsters are. And I know that Johnny's one of those field researchers. Jonny, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited about having you on. Let's start here. Um, most of the time when people get into this Bigfoot realm or the world of cryptids, they either start as a young man or a kid where they have some kind of encounter or experience, or they kind of get infatuated with the subject as an adult and then they kind of dive deep into it. Was it something that you came across as a kid, or was this something that you found yourself being involved with as an adult?
No, actually, it was as an adult. It was kind of matter of circumstance. I didn't care much for the topic at all. Didn't know anybody that did. But in 2012, I live in Georgia. I live about 40 miles outside of Atlanta, and my wife and I purchased a home in 2012. It kind of sits back on property back in the woods, and we have a wildlife management area behind us. And it honestly started with crazy stuff happening at night. And it was actually more, at first, it was more focused towards my neighbor, like really harassing type of stuff, like beating on the house and rocks getting thrown and sticks being thrown. And just, I thought it was people creeping around at night. First, I thought it was kids. And then it got to the point to where it was like these kids are really good at what they're doing. So then I started thinking adult. And then I don't know, man, it probably took me about 9 months. And I honestly can't even tell you why I started thinking Bigfoot. I just had a bunch of weird things happen that I could not figure out. And that's what got me started at about 20. The activity didn't start right away. It probably started around 2017. By about 2018, I was sitting on about 50-50 on I was dealing with humans or I was dealing with, if this Bigfoot thing's real, maybe it's that. And I just started, doing research online. 90% of the research I did was just listening to podcasts, just like yours. I found over the years that just listening to witnesses, and you can really, really get some good information on what they experience, what these creatures do, and it's just kind of a pattern recognition. You see the same things over and over again, and I'd hear something on a podcast, and then it would happen around here, or it would happen around here, and then I'd hear something on the podcast. So it was just kind of a gradual buildup. It was probably, I guess, about close to 2019 when I had already purchased my first. I spent like $500 on a thermal, and I was getting serious. One thing, it was scaring my wife, all the activity, and it was really getting to the point to where it was kind of ticking me off. And I'm prior military, and it was really starting to get like a pride thing. Like my family didn't feel safe, and I just couldn't get
Right.
answers. And so one was one summer. I actually had to have two surgeries in a row. I had a rotator cuff surgery, and then a few months later, I had a disc replaced in my neck. Well, I was out of work while I was recovering, and I got this wild hair. I'm like, man, I'm just going to start doing armed patrols at night around my property. And there's, I don't know, about 100 yards behind my house, there was, there had been a few things happen. I started finding, I didn't know it at the time, but what people consider structures, rock stacks, stuff like that. So I started going out there at night, armed with a flashlight. And I'd just walk around and be a pest. I'd be loud. I'd kick. If I'd see something look like it was made, I'd kick it, break it, pull it apart. Just being an absolute jerk, basically, just out of frustration. And I did that for about a week. Nothing happened. And then one afternoon, I was building my kid's treehouse, and it's kind of on my side yard. And I've got a horse fence, and on the other side of that horse fence is the wood line that separates my house and my neighbor's house. Well, it's probably about an hour before the sun goes down. I get done working. I sit on my porch, and I'm sitting there just chilling out, drinking some coffee. And back behind the treehouse, on the other side of the horse fence, there's a hill, and it goes down where there's a tree. It's about as big around as a soccer ball. And that tree just starts shaking like crazy. Like it was impossible for a man to do with his bare hands. Watching it was surreal. It was kind of shocking. But I jumped up, I ran out there, and because of that hill, you can't see like the bottom 10 feet of the tree. I ran out there and I didn't see anything. But I'm like, oh man, I'd never had anything happen during the day like that. And I'm like, well, tonight I'm doing my patrol. So I get all my stuff together. I've got German Shepherds, and I got a flashlight, a cheap parabolic, a thermal, and a pistol. And I open the front door, and my dogs go straight to that same fence right behind the treehouse where the tree was shaking earlier that day. And I'm like, all right, it's on now. I'm about to figure out what this is. So I ran out there, went out of the gate, and there's a little trail back there, and I kind of went to the top of the trail. I walked about 10 feet down the trail, and rocks started falling all around me. Well, I backed up. I'm like getting my bearings. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Now I'm thinking, I'm like, all right, it's a person. So I start going down the trail again, and rocks start falling around me again. Well, at this time, I'm ticked, and I yell out, if you hit me with a rock, I'm going to shoot you. Well, nothing happens. So I go down that trail. There's a little pine thicket. I found out later on that's actually where I think they were bedding at. But I go down there in that pine thicket. I'm looking around through the trails. I'm down there about 10, 15 minutes. I don't see anything. I walk back up to the top of the trail, and I'm standing there looking into my neighbor's backyard with my thermal. And off to my right from the trail that I just came from 30 feet away, one of these things growls at me. And it was instantaneous. I knew right then and there what it was. I'd never heard anything like it. I'd never been between the Marine Corps and the fire department. I've been in some, kind of hairy situations, but and you just kind of get used to that kind of stuff. And I honestly, I don't remember ever being that afraid in my life. I had a pistol on my hip, but it was so close, and I knew instantaneously that if it got up on me that quickly or that quietly and got that close, that there was nothing I could do. So I just stood there, and all I said was, all right, man, I get it. I'm leaving. I stood there for about 3 minutes, just completely still, waiting I even had a flashlight in my hand, but I didn't turn it on. I didn't do anything. I just stood there. And so I just start backing up. I didn't hear anything. I didn't see anything after that, and that was pretty much the beginning. I was hooked. Now I went from it'd be another year before I actually saw one out here, and it was actually as deep down the rabbit hole as I went. It was actually pretty boring sighting. I was sitting on my front porch, and the thing comes walking. My driveway goes across the front of my house at an angle. I'm just sitting out there on my front porch at night, and I see one walking. I see him for about 6 or 8 seconds. The right side profile, full body silhouette. I've got a neighbor about 100 yards in front of me, and all their lights are on, and it's wintertime. So it's kind of like you see in the movies where the monster walks in front of the movie screen. Well, that's exactly what I saw. And
Wow.
I saw it, and I knew what I was looking at, but then I stood up. I saw its right side. And then I stood up, and when I stood up, it turned towards me. And you hear it all the time. You hear people say these things are 4 feet wide. They are not lying. This thing was every bit of 4 feet wide. And the funny thing is, so it's walking kind of at an angle, and I see its right side. And when it turns its upper body, it turns it towards me, but its legs just keep going in the direction it was going. And then it turned back, and then it was out of my sight. So that was the first time I saw one. That was, I think it was 2018 was when I saw it. So I just, man, after that, I just went down the rabbit hole. Main thing I wanted to do is when you get into doing this and you realize they're real, there's kind of one goal after another. First, it was for me to confirm that these things were real. You know, I was a skeptic, but I confirmed it was real. Then I had a sighting at night. And then the next thing was, well, I want to see if all these other people are telling the truth. Are they really all over the place? Can you go out to these areas, like go to North Georgia or go to, Tennessee or wherever and find their habitat? And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to find these things, and I wanted to have a daytime sighting, because even as clear as I was, even as convinced as I was still only like 98% because I didn't see it during the day. I always kind of left in the back of my head, what if I'm wrong? But what I saw was what I saw. I've never seen a human that big in my life. The growl, I've since then, I think 2 years later, I'd actually recorded that growl from back behind my house. Same exact growl, except when I heard it, I was 30 feet away. But so I wanted to start getting out and trying to find these things, figure out how I could actually go and find them and then learn more about it. Well, I had started a little Facebook group, and the focus of the group is I was just trying to find research partners. That's all I was trying to do. Now we have team members that are in the BFRO. I know some people have their opinions of it or whatever, but the BFRO is made up of so many different people that, I've met a lot of good people through that organization. I'm not a part of it, but I kind of went down that road. I started looking at different organizations and all this other stuff, and the more just listening to podcasts and kind of talking here and there to other researchers, I just really figured it wasn't rocket science. That I think I could do this myself. Well, in that little group, I had made a couple friends, and one of those friends, his name is Captain Joe Cayley. He was a captain in the Army. He was an Army Ranger, and he's actually a bona fide war hero. He lost his leg saving 3 civilians in Iraq. Well, I served in Iraq too, and so that's kind of how we started talking. And then he kind of opened up to me about his sighting. I think it's been about 4 years now. but he was running a sniper challenge on a military base here in Georgia. He's real big into long distance shooting. Uh, he actually works for it's a television program called The Pigman. They go around all over hunting different stuff, but he's in charge of like their marketing and long distance shooting and all that stuff. So he reached out to me to tell me about his sighting, and basically he was on a rifle range, put together this sniper challenge, and he's spotting for all these different shooters. And as they're shooting, he sees a Sasquatch about 1,200 yards back behind the main berm cross the road. And they wound up, it was a big deal. They wound up having to stop the shooting competition and all this other stuff. And now he's using a spotting scope. So 1,200 yards is nothing. You know, he got a really, really, really good look at this thing. And he told me about it and everything. And I started making videos about all the stuff that happened around here. And then we just kind of, we've got another member. Her name is Angie Williamson. She's actually a parole officer. Really good at documentation. Really good at doing, taking people's reports and all that good stuff. Making new contacts, finding new areas, all that. She kind of got involved. And one day, Joe just called me up and said, "Hey, man, let's start a podcast." And I told him, I said, "No, I'm not doing it. I don't want to be a part of the podcast world. You know, that's not what I'm doing. I'm not I don't know. I just didn't think it was for me." But when he told me that, "Look, man, you sharing everything that you've had happened around there helped me come forward with my sighting." And he told me that, and I'm like, man, I guess, you know, I kind of inadvertently, I felt like I'd done something good, I guess, kind of helped him out a little bit, maybe. And then, you know, why not? So he kind of put the podcast together, but I was still looking for, I wanted to focus on field research. So I started putting a little bit of a team together to go out in the field, and he started working on podcast, and we started, you know, interviewing a couple people. Well, he lives near Augusta, and he owns hunting property right outside of Augusta. And he was contacted. I kind of skipped over. That's when we started. After all that, we started the SEB, Sasquatch Encounter Brigade, and most of us are prior military. We've got law enforcement, a couple civilians. Not like we don't value everybody. I mean, we've got one team member, two team members. You know, they haven't been military or anything. It's just kind of the circles it's just kind of our wheelhouse.
The circle you run in. I got you.
Right. So we put that together, started the podcast, and then I started kind of putting a team together. But we were contacted by another gentleman that lived outside of Augusta also. And he had a story. And his story was basically when he was, this was 30 years ago, over 30 years ago now, when he was 19 years old. He was hunting he grew up with this guy, and this guy's family owns a lot of property. Now, a lot of people, especially people with their own property with these things on them, we keep confidential. So I'm not going to go into a lot about that, the property owner, but he comes from a very well-to-do family, basically. They've got a lot of acreage. The property has been in this family since colonial days. It was a king's grant. That's how long it's been in the same family. Well, he went out there to go deer hunting. His name's Happy Harris, the guy I'm talking about. And he went out there on his buddy's property by himself. And he's walking down this power line, or it's actually a gas line. And he sees what he thinks is a makeshift deer blind left by another hunter. So he goes and sits down in this blind. Well, he's there about 30 minutes. And he said that from behind him, now he didn't see anything, But he had two of these creatures come up behind him, basically yelling in, I'm sure you've heard the term, the samurai chatter.
Yes,
It's
I've heard it before.
their
Yeah.
vote, right? Well, that's what he said he heard, and he said it scared him so bad that all he remembers doing is tensing up and passing out. Uh, he woke up 30 minutes later, sitting up in the front seat of his truck that was 300 yards away from that makeshift blind. He had absolutely no idea how he got there. he he wasn't hurt. He said the only thing that hurt was, he said he tensed up so bad that all the muscles and joints were sore in his body. I mean, he's 19 years old. Uh, he said for a couple days. He said there was actually like crescent moon marks in the wood of the buttstock of the gun where his fingernails dug in. That's how much this scared him and how much it put him into shock. Well, he basically quit going in the woods after that. He went out a handful of times, duck hunting, stuff like that, but he pretty much quit deer hunting. He didn't tell anybody about it. And then, for whatever reason, he decided it was time. He came across our podcast and got in contact with Captain Joe and told us about it. Now, you hear something like that, and initially, I'm sure just like a lot of people, you're like, I don't know if I believe that. But what that said to me was, number one, it was how old that property was and how few people go out there. That's very intriguing. And then you have these. Now, Happy won't say it. He won't say they carried him back to his truck. I guess nobody can confirm that. But I'm pretty comfortable speculating in that direction. But for whatever reason, whether they carried him
That's
there
what it
or
sounds
not,
like to me, bro. And they've been known to do that as well.
right. So to me, that said, these things did not want to leave. Now, whatever, we don't know their intentions. We don't know if they were doing it because they didn't want other humans to come out there. He had been coming out there since he was a kid. So, maybe they had some type, maybe they thought him laying there, he would be in danger. We have no idea why they did what they did. But to me, it was like, wow, you don't hear them. I mean, you hear stuff like this every once in a while, some pretty famous cases, but you don't hear that a lot where these things actually put hands on people, especially when you do hear it, it doesn't turn out very well most of the time. So that was very interesting to me. Well, I got to know Happy, and it erased all fear. I didn't feel like he was, I think I've got a pretty good BS detector. Now, I've been wrong a handful of times. Not afraid to admit that. But for the most part, I think I do pretty good. And he's just a genuine guy. And I believed him. And he had nothing to gain from it. The guy whose property it is, he'd almost quit talking to the guy just out of embarrassment, out of not having an excuse to tell him why he didn't want to come out there, and it actually broke up a pretty good friendship. So we kind of talked him into having an investigation out there, and he talked to the property owner. Now, it was me, Captain Joe, a guy named Scott DeForest. He's also prior Marine Corps. He's a BFRO investigator. He's now a member. Mr. Bruce from Florida, he came up here to help out. Who else am I leaving out? I know I'm leaving somebody out. So it's me, Captain Joe, Joey, Happy, Scott DeForest, 5 of us. So we go out there on this property. He's going to show us around. And the first thing he's going to do is take us to where it all happened. So we walk through this little patch of woods. The first thing, right when we walk in, he finds a deer skull. He shows it off, and now we've recorded all this. I did a little documentary. It's called "From the Happy Place to the Valley of Death." We were hitting two spots. We were actually going to Captain Joe's cabin, where he's actually had activity out there, and then going to Happy Spot, which we call the Happy Place. So we all go out there, get out of the trucks, walk. He finds a deer skull. We make our way out in the pipeline, and there's a deer feeder out there at the pipeline. And Happy is going up and down. I don't know. He had made it 30 feet up the pipeline looking for this spot, you know. Well, Scott DeForest says, "Hey, I got a track." And about that time, I looked down and I said, "Hey, I got a track." So in two different areas, we had two different trackways coming away from that deer feeder. And it was, they're not like castable tracks. 99% of the tracks we find are not castable. They show motion. These things have really, really nimble feet. They bend. Not only do they have the, what's it called? The break in the middle of the foot pad, like a hinge. But when they step, it's hard to describe, but their tracks, we found a ton of their tracks, but I've only found like two that are castable. And a lot of times when you find them, especially when they're in motion, the tracks will actually look like, you've seen those the little boots that ninjas wear, like the two-toed boots. They
Yeah,
actually kind
like
of look
it's
like that.
two-toe boots. Yeah.
Right. So we found a lot of those. We found where one was actually running. Must have been running pretty fast because it was pretty deep, and he actually turned to his side. And you can tell a lot from tracks. But we just basically followed this trackway into the woods, into the opposite wood line. Well, we keep walking in, go about 100 yards. We find a nest. We find it looks just like a donut made out of pine straw. It looks like a human got down on their knees, reached out, grabbed all the pine straw, 360 degrees, and made like a 10-foot circle. And in the middle of this 10-foot circle was a perfect, I laid down in it. That's on the video. It's like a perfect spot for you to lay in. Well, we wound up finding two of those. They're not even probably 30 yards away from each other, if that. One of them's older. It had water in it, so obviously they moved. That's still to this day some of the coolest evidence I've ever found. We found a bunch of bones, bunch of hog bones, all kinds of stuff out there that day. Well, that night, it was me, Scott DeForest, and Happy. Everybody else went back to the cabin on Captain Joe's property. So we built a fire and we're hanging out. Well, we have all this recorded on audio. I just bought a brand new vehicle, and it's parked almost in the middle of this pipeline, and we've got our fire right next to it. Well, a rock hits my vehicle, and we're like, "Oh crap!" Now I get really excited, but then again, it's a brand new vehicle, and they just threw a rock at it, so I was a little iffy on that one. But so this rock hits, and it's nowhere near the tree line. There's no way possible that anything can fall out of the tree and hit my vehicle. And then we start hearing grunts, obvious grunts right behind us. It's probably, I don't know, 50 feet away in the wood line. The wood line's probably 30 feet away. They're probably 50, 60 feet away. But we act like nothing's going on. Well, Happy, he kind of gets a little nervous, and he reaches over, grabs the flashlight, and turns the button on. And right when he does it, me and Scott both go, no, turn it off. So he turns it off. Where in the audio, when he turns that flashlight on and we say, no, turn it off, you can hear the Sasquatch actually responding to the flashlight. They apparently did not like that because they go like that. So that whole trip was a success, right? Good to go. We found, all right, now we've got this great research area. We've got confirmation they're there. We've got tracks. I've never seen so many animal bones in my life. There's deer and pig bones everywhere out there. In one spot in particular by a creek, it's like they're dumping them out there. And the way it's set up, it looks like they're bedding on one side, and then they're dumping their bones on the other side with the pipeline in between them. There's two different wood lines. So we wind up going out there about 3 times, find a bunch of stuff. I'll kind of leave. We found a bunch of stuff out at Captain Joe's. We wound up finding 25 dead canines that in different stages of decomposition, where
Holy crap.
we don't know if they were. We actually found one only been dead a day, and it was a big dog, a Rottweiler, but they're all in various stages of decomposition. And it started out 6 months before that. He cleared this area out to put a deer blind out there. He put up cameras and everything else. Well, his feeder got destroyed. His camera got destroyed. Another camera wound up like 800 yards out in the swamp. And then he found this dead dog on this trail. Now, that was 6 months before we come out there. We get out there and we're walking down the trail. And I'm like, hey, Joe, is this the dead dog? And he's like, no, that's not it. That must be a new one. I'm like, oh, okay. And we keep walking, and he finds the original one. Well, I start looking around, and I'm seeing it's in like a 1 acre section. I'm looking around, and there's like white dots all in the leaves everywhere. Well, we walked that whole area, and I think it was 25 or 26 canine skulls that had been, it looked like, killed in other areas and brought and set around his blind, which was, I mean, I raised German Shepherds. It was gruesome. But they've
I
got
had
a
a
bunch of
question for you. Was it like they were eating these dogs, or were they just killing them? And was it like they were consuming them? What were they doing with them?
We can only speculate. I think he had been hunting in other property or other parts of the property. This one particular part of the property is very close, only about 100 yards away from a swamp. I think he got too close because they absolutely destroyed his feeder. Like I said, he's got really expensive cellular game cameras. Found it however many hundreds of yards in the swamp. And then all these dead dogs, I think they're trying to run him out. I think they're trying to scare him. Now, odds are, if I had to guess, they're probably not just killing the dogs just to bring them out there. But I definitely think, and a lot of other people do too, that they eat dogs and they eat coyotes. So maybe, who knows? Maybe they were killing them somewhere else and just like, hey, let's drop by old Jerk's house and drop off a dead dog for him again. I mean, there's no real way to know, but it was. I mean, it's a sight to see. It's on video. We go through and walk and count every single one of these bones. But so that was interesting. We had a good trip. We go out there, I think 2 other times. On the last or the 4th time we go out there, first me and Scott DeForest walk around. We find some pretty good evidence. We come back to the camp. Happy Harris is there, but he winds up having to leave. Captain Joe shows up. Well, me and Captain Joe, so our camp is right in the middle of that same pipeline I've been talking about. We've got our vehicles lined up there. Scott says he's going to hang out there where where the camp is, and me and Captain Joe, we're just going to go check out the pine beds that we found before, because we come out and check them every time just to see if they're actually maintaining that other one, the newer one that we found. They had been maintaining it up to that point. Walking around looking for tracks, looking for bones and everything. And one thing that was different that may explain a lot of this, but they were doing clear cutting on the other side of the property. But I mean, it's a 300-acre property and it's on the other side. But anyway, it's pretty loud throughout most of the day. And they got done clear cutting. And then that's when Joe shows up and we go walking out there. Well, we're walking around for about 45 minutes and we're done, we're not really being quiet. We're talking. Just walking back to camp. And he is behind me and to my left, probably 60 feet. I find another set of antlers. I stop. I pick up the antlers. I look at them. I'm like, hey, found more antlers. Throw them down. I walk maybe 20 feet. And I stop dead in my tracks, look to my right, and standing 40 feet away is a Sasquatch. As clear as day. To me, it looks like kind of a teenager. We call it a juvenile. We don't know 100%. What I saw is probably best described more like a skunk ape. It was no taller than me. It had long, skinny arms. It was all black. I mean, it looked like a scraggly teenager is what it really looked like. But it had a white goatee. The hair was like jet black. And it had a really goofy-looking cowlick, like a big cowlick on the top of his head, which actually comes into play later on. But I turn and look at him. And I'm looking right at him. I see his whole body. There's nothing in front of him. He's right there. It's daytime. Perfect sighting. But when I stopped to pick those antlers up, I put my freaking phone back in my pocket. But I had a GoPro on my back. Every time I go out, I record everything behind me too. So I had a rear-facing GoPro. So I'm looking at this thing, and the only thing I can think of, instead of looking down and fumbling with my phone, is just to act like I didn't see him and turn my back to him, hoping to get him on that GoPro. So I turn around, I pull my phone out of my pocket, I turn it on, I turn back around, and I'm looking and I'm scanning and I can't see it. And I say, this is all on video. I say, Joe, they're here. I just saw one. And he's far enough away to where he understands what I'm saying, but not real clear. Well, the first thing I think is if I got him on that rear-facing GoPro video, I've got to protect it. We've had a few different times where we've had weird things happen with electronics. People blame it on like Sasquatch is paranormal or whatever. I mean, I went through a phase of buying video games and computers and stuff from Best Buy. It was like every other thing I bought was broken, brand new. I mean, just electronics break. It's just the way it is. Not discarding, people's accounts from what may or may not have happened, but I didn't want anything happening to this GoPro video. So I run back to him. I said, Joe, turn the GoPro off. And I explained everything that happened, told him what I saw. I secure the GoPro. I turn around and I go back to where I saw him. Now, I'm thinking that when he left, odds are he went away from us. Just made sense. So I kind of go in the direction where I saw him, and I'm moving away from Joe. Now, back behind Joe, about 200 yards through the back down the trail, that trail leads back to the pipeline, was where Scott's sitting. So I'm looking around trying to find something. Only maybe 3 minutes passed, and I hear Joe say, "I see him." He is back over my left shoulder, back behind me, probably about 60 feet again. We stayed about the same distance. So I quit looking. So this means now he didn't go away from us. He's now gotten behind me and in front of Joe and headed back towards the camp. So I come back to Joe, and Joe explains, "Yeah, there's this berm out there from heavy equipment where they cut shooting lanes and stuff or whatever, did something. But there's this dirt berm out there with grass on it." And he said that he saw it clear as day, described it the same thing I did. But he saw from the waist up. It walked behind that berm and then went into the woods. Well, we're standing there talking, and we hear all this crashing and breaking, and it's back on the trail that we just came from. So we start walking that direction, and we get to this creek, and I stop and I look, and there are, initially I think it's footprints, but it's fingerprints where this thing, I mean, that was, till this day, it's still one of the best pieces of evidence I've ever seen, that I've enjoyed the most, because it was 4 fingerprints stuck right in the mud. And I knew, I mean, this just happened like 3 minutes max right before I got to him. You know, I mean, it was just really cool. Even though I just saw him, seeing those fingerprints was just, it was just really cool. So, we really think the thing's just running away from us. That it's just going to go away. It's over with. We both saw it, which was great, but it's probably gone. I call Scott up and I say, "Hey, man, we just saw one. It's coming your way. Be on the lookout." We start walking out, and every single time we stop, there's more crashing and breaking in front of us. Now, keep in mind, from the beginning of this sighting, there was no sound. It didn't make, when it walked up, the only thing I can think of is I just felt it when I turned and looked right at it. It's that's real common. I mean, people do that all the time. You could tell when somebody's looking at you, but I didn't hear anything. And then when it left and walked away, when I had my back turned, I didn't hear anything. We never heard anything the whole time. The only time we heard anything is when it was intentionally making noise. And me and him both say, "Man, he's doing this on purpose. He's taking us back to our camp." And that's exactly what happened. We keep walking down the trail, and I'm videotaping this whole time. We walk out of the woods, and we look to our left, and Scott is standing up in the back of his truck, and he's waving his arms. He's probably 150 yards away. Me and Joe are freaking out. We can't believe this just happened. Both of us are, we got an adrenaline rush. We're talking about it, everything else. And Scott's yelling something, and we get closer, and he says that he got up in the back of his truck when I called him. And as he's looking, the Sasquatch that we saw comes out on all fours, doing what they refer to as the spider crawl, does a button hook, goes back into the woods, and then 10 yards away, me and Joe come walking out. We had no idea it was that close. And you think that would be it.
That's close to it.
That was, I could never, every single thing was absolutely perfect. I mean, it was the highlight. I could not have asked for a better sighting. I could not have asked for a better experience. I could not have asked for better witnesses that saw it with me. We're standing over there talking. I'm setting my thermal up. I get it up in the back of the truck. We're talking. I call Happy. I'm like, "Happy, dude, you're not crazy, man. You're right. These things are out here. We just saw them." Explain the whole thing to him. Maybe 30 minutes goes by. It's probably 10 minutes before dark. And Scott yells, "There he is." We all turn around and look in the direction down that same pipeline, in the direction where we came out of the woods. And there is another Sasquatch. It's not the same one. This one's bigger, running on all fours
Mm-hmm.
across the pipeline. And it goes from one side to the other. It hits the other wood line, turns right, runs away from us. I don't know, maybe another 30 yards, and then turns left into the woods. And they're standing there with their eyes, their jaw dropped. Well, as soon as it hits the wood line, I start running towards it, which was ridiculous when you think about it. I don't know what I thought I was going to do. Like, I thought I was going to catch it, but I was trying to run towards it so I could get my phone out so I could record it. But that's it. That was I mean, it was amazing. It was just absolutely mind blowing. Not only the difference in between, I could tell as soon as I saw the other one, it was the same exact color, but it was bigger. And I put a video up. The only way I could describe how this thing was running was there's a video of a crocodile where it takes off running, and it bounds with its arms. And it's just so hard to wrap my head around. When it runs, its arms go out like a Superman position. Its feet are behind it, almost straight out. And then they come back together. And then he does it again. And then they come back together and he
Right.
does it again. Mechanically, the way this thing ran did not make any sense to me at all. But the speed, I would have to say, as at least as fast as a deer. And
Holy crap.
all three of us saw it. We're all looking at it. And now, since we've had time to process every bit of this, now, bad news is I didn't get it on the GoPro. Good news is after Joe saw it and we come together and we're walking towards that creek, I'm recording the whole time. I do get it on video. We don't know this, but right before we get to that creek, the one we saw, the initial one, the teenager, he's in the wood line, only about 40, 45 feet away from us. And you could see him on the video. It's not, first he's looking around the side of the tree, then he goes down, then he goes back like underneath the trees. And there's one screenshot, and we put it up all the time over and over again. But I mean, it's as clear as day. Now, the only way, if I were to hand you this video and say, "Hey, find the Sasquatch," you probably couldn't do it. But I knew what I was looking for, and the dead giveaway was that white goatee and the big black cowlick. So I found him, and the screenshot is as clear as it can be. So that was good. You know, there's also, I go over the video over and over and over and over again. There's a few other things going on in there. I honestly think that because of those beds and everything that happened and it trying to lead us out and seeing the bigger one and the teenager, I think we were in a nursery. And I think they were trying to lead us away from there. It's the only thing that made sense. You could say the initial sighting was a mistake, that maybe it just didn't know we were there, that the clear cutting kept it from being able to hear us or whatever. I just don't think that's the case. I think we were in a spot that they wanted us to leave, and that it knew we would follow them. There was absolutely no reason for the bigger one, the bigger adult, to run across the field the way it did that second time. If you're standing in the middle of that pipeline, looking down towards where we saw it run across and where we came out earlier, you go about 300 yards and there's a creek, and that creek is about 7 feet deep.
Okay.
You can get on you can start in one wood line, drop down in that creek, walk across the pipeline and go into the other wood line, and nobody would ever know. You could do it on a pogo stick, and nobody would ever know. It could have waited 20 more minutes, and it would have been dark, and it could have crossed anywhere it wanted to. It intentionally crossed right there. I think it was trying to get us to follow it even more, is the only thing I can figure. But that's been our so from beginning to end, I mean, we've all just accomplished exactly what we wanted to do. And, we're trying to do it again. I'm still doing, I still do stuff around here. I still have activity. I had activity last night. Put up a video a couple months ago. I got a really good thermal video of one's face out here. That was a weird situation. My wife was out in the front yard with me. With our channel, or with me especially, you're going to see how the sausage is made. I do my own debunking.
Okay.
Anytime there's been a lot of weird stuff around here. There's between me and my neighbor's house, 7 of us have seen orbs. I've seen 8 orbs over the years. A lot of people think Sasquatch and orbs are connected. I'm not convinced of that yet. But just a lot of weird stuff that happens around here. But when something does happen, I go through the process of trying to debunk it, figure out if it's something else, that I make a mistake, measurements, the whole 9 yards. But I can tell you right now, I had another incident. I've personally have 3 videos of Sasquatch. One of them is 100% the screenshot of the juvenile. There's no doubt in my mind it's the exact one we saw. The thermal video on my own property, I'd say that's about 98% because I wasn't standing out there with it during the daytime. So I can't tell you 100%, but I'm pretty daggum sure. I've got another one of probably about a year and a half ago of what I believe is one crossing behind me at 175 yards back in the wildlife management area during the day. But it is a blob squatch. I'm only about 50% on this one. I did comparison shots. It's massive. It's a lot bigger than me. It's obviously moving. It looks like a gorilla walking in the middle of the road is exactly what it looks like. But that was just taken on chance. I wasn't even recording behind me that day. I just stuck my cell phone behind me a couple times. But other than that, we've got, I've got recordings of the growl. We've got a really good growl. A lot of different vocals. And that's pretty much it. Now, I've got my own thing going on here, and then, we have the team effort. Angie Williamson, the lady I was talking about before, she runs a lot of the stuff in South Georgia. She helped put on a festival here lately and everything else. But personally, my main focus is just the field research. I love doing it. I love getting out there, and I make no qualms about the fact that I'm trying to prove these things are real. Just because I'm
It
fascinated.
sounds to me like you guys have already done a great job of proving that they're real, man. I mean, when it comes to eyewitness testimony, it stands up in court. It stands up in every circumstance. It's only a problem when it comes to Bigfoot. If you got 2 or 3 people who've seen it that are credible, that have a military background or a law enforcement background, I don't think you get any credible than that. I don't know how you get any more credible than that,
Yeah, well, I know what you're saying. I guess mainly, I mean, I'll tell you straight up, even if I did it, let's say I got the Patterson Gimlin film tomorrow, I wouldn't stop. That wouldn't be
enough for you. No.
No, man, it's just I'm fascinated with them. I think there's more we can do. I think I would love to be able to get to the point to where we could somehow, some way accomplish long-term observation. I think it's going to come down to I think private property is the key. And I think long distance surveillance is going to be another key. it's difficult. I just had last night. I just had one get behind me. I put the videos up, did a wood knock. It probably got within, I don't know, maybe 60, 70 feet of me. And I was trying to sneak back to the back of my property. Um, Now, stuff doesn't happen here every day. It'll be like a week where things will happen. And then it may be like 2 or 3 weeks and nothing happens. And then during the summertime, like I don't have any activity. But during the wintertime and the spring, I have a good amount of activity here. And you got to figure, like I spend a couple hours outside just about every single night. And if you go from when I got real serious around 2018, 2019 till now, and you figure I've only got 2 videos of what I know to be 100% Sasquatch, that's a lot of work for a little bit of payoff, you know. But every time we get a little closer and a little closer, and then our standard for evidence goes up, you know. So I can't be happy, you know. I couldn't be any happier than what I am with our team and what we've done. I've made a lot of really good friends through this topic in general. Uh, you know, I just enjoy it, and I just love doing it. I don't know what I would do if I did prove it to the world. I don't think there would be any stopping. I just enjoy it, man.
No, it means you just have a passion for it and you really love it. And that's a good thing. I talk to a lot of researchers, and you sound, unlike many other researchers, you don't sound like you're discouraged at all. You sound like, man, I'm full bore, ready to go out there and find it and prove that it exists. Um, and I think most researchers, well, I know most researchers that I've talked to, they've caught substantial evidence, but it's kind of like there's this thing in the back of their mind: I can get more, I can get something better, I can do
Right.
better. And I think that's what it takes, man. It's like being a treasure hunter, they don't stop until they find the big piece of treasure, and then the next thing you know, they're looking for the next one. So it's just a lifestyle
Well,
that you guys have come to love.
I'll tell this, and then I'll I'll quit running my mouth. But it was years before I told my kids. They knew I was interested. They knew I went out, but I never told them what was going on around the house because I didn't want them scared. Um, my wife knew, and we had rules to like for safety, like they don't go out of the fence by themselves, you know, especially at night, stuff like that. But they didn't know why I was interested. Well, after that sighting, I came home and told them. I told my wife, um, you know, it changed. There was no, I definitely couldn't doubt it anymore. So I didn't really see a point in hiding it. Well, I explained to my son, I'm like, look, you know, these things are 100% real. And I plan on getting more evidence, but don't go around in school telling people, you know, our business. Because number one, I don't want him getting a bunch of flack because of what I do, you know. Um, but I said, but look, I'm very proud of what I do because we are trying to accomplish one of the hardest things there is to do in this world. And that is to prove something exists that 99.9% of the people out there don't even think exist. Said, but I know they exist. So I think we're going to be able to do it. Well, you never know when you talk to your kids on, you know, what exactly they take in. But it was a couple days later, he was asking me about space. And something about is space real or whatever. And I said, son, I don't know. You know, if you want to know something like that, sometimes you just got to prove it to yourself. You know, you're smart enough, you stay in school. Maybe one day you can be an astronaut and prove it to yourself. And the next day, he came home with a diagram that he had drawn up for a high altitude balloon with a camera on it that he wanted to make to go up to space. And as soon as I saw it, not only was I extremely proud, but I was heartbroken because I knew I had to tell him this thing would cost several $1,000,000 to build, and there's a reason why we can't build it. But in just that 2-day time period of explaining everything I was doing, and trying to explain to him how it's there's no better feeling than accomplishing something that's extremely difficult. And then he comes home the next day he's like, all right, well, screw it, we're going to build a spaceship. So just that right there, I can tell you right now, that could, little things like that definitely keeps me going, and then but I'm with you on the evidence, man. I'm the same way. I get kind of down sometimes, like if it's been a couple months and I haven't got anything good. I'm like, God, man, what if I don't get another piece of evidence? What if I never get one recorded again? What blah 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 blah. But you just got to stick with it, and then it happens pretty much the same way every time. When you least expect it is when I wind up getting good evidence. So that's the it's just statistics, man. Just over and over and over and over again. You got just got to keep on going.
And it's important too, Johnny, that you understand that, like, you guys as field researchers, you balance the scale against all the other things that get injected into the topic. So that's why I love talking to researchers, because I'll talk to eyewitnesses and some people lying, and then you'll talk to people who have agendas. But the more researchers I talk to, the more common things you guys say that are in common. But that researchers have to have a stronger voice, because you guys balance the scales off in the Bigfoot community as far as the topic is concerned. Um, and it removes a lot of the other foolishness. So the Bigfoot community has, like, people who tell stories, people who do interviews, people who pass opinions and kind of like stay in the middle of causing mess. And then there's actual real field researchers who have real field data. You
Right.
guys weigh heavily on the scale, more heavy than anybody else. It's just there's this imbalance as far as you guys getting out your information. It's mainly because you spend time in the field. But for the overall health of the
Yeah.
Bigfoot topic, you guys need to be pushed to the forefront because you have the real data. You know what I'm saying? And there has to be a
Yeah.
balance there. And that's how you keep down all the confusion and all the riffraff and all the foolishness. But then there's a segment of the community that likes to call people hoaxers, and if this is a hoax, that's a hoax, and blah 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 blah. But
No, it
nonetheless,
doesn't.
the
It doesn't.
researchers,
It doesn't matter what it is. It's always nothing's ever real. It seems like to
right.
everybody. Nobody ever believes anybody.
And that's done on purpose, though. I mean, you can
Right.
see, yeah, it's done on purpose. But for those who appreciate it and people, because there's a lot of, like, the audiences have common sense and they have the ability to filter through what's real and what's fake. And then they have the discernment to listen to a man talk and know that a person is really passionate and decide, okay, is this person passionate? And does their passion lead to them actually going after something? Or is this person just passing opinion and they're sitting behind a computer? And that's what I
Right.
love about the field. The deeper you get into it, the more you interact with people, like the listeners, they know the difference, man. They know.
Yeah.
It's just there's some loudmouths that discourage people. But I want you guys to be encouraged, man. I want you guys to keep going out in the field, getting evidence, because researchers really balance the scale across the board. Because there's things that people will say who read a book. Well, Bigfoot does this, and they can fly and they can cloak and they can hide, and then a researcher will say, I don't know about all that. I saw
Right.
this, I saw this, I saw this, I saw this, and it's definitive facts. Then it's backed up by other researchers who were out in the field with them, and that has a heavier weight to me than what a lot of people say. So I just want you guys to be encouraged, man. If there's anything I can do to help you guys get the message out and get word out, I am here to help, because I understand if what happens when the scales aren't balanced is the topic spirals out of control and it just goes into madness. And, like, we're kind of
Yeah.
going through a phase of that right now.
Well, there's a lot of man. I've met some opportunists. I can tell you that straight up. That's another reason why we really leaned into doing our own group. Is not everybody doing this is interested in, like, getting evidence that Bigfoot is real. And I learned just like you, I'm sure you've seen in what you do, it doesn't, you really don't even have to accomplish anything substantial to like, it's so weird to like build a name for yourself in this. You can just be a personality and not actually add any. And personally, I don't care. I mean, there's the way I see it, there's enough things involving this field that, people can fill whatever voids they want to. But when it does come to the research, it does get muddied a lot with I don't know, man. Like I said, people just have agendas, and I think one of the biggest problems we have is universities and other organizations not taking. Well, you can't blame them for not taking it seriously. We need to find a way to get legitimate evidence to people. Now, I know people that straight up do this because they want to make money. What we're missing is, and we've never taken a dime. We're all self-funded, but I can only imagine what we could accomplish if we had teams of people that could afford to, like, for 6 months, like as a job, just do research with, a couple $1,000s worth of good cameras. I mean, I think we could really, really, really get some good stuff done, but there's just a lot of barriers to entry. A lot of us are doing this part time. I've got a full time job, wife, kids, and everything else. There's a lot of things that are kind of holding the topic back. But I agree with you in the fact that you kind of got to just shuffle through all the BS and get down to the actual evidence, and that's the only way. And that's one thing I try to tell people is I'm not a rocket scientist. I don't work for NASA. I'm not an engineer, but I figured out how to do this. I have outdoor skills and a military background, but you don't even necessarily need that or the military background. You got to have some outdoor skills to be helpful in this. Angie, she had no field experience, but the first time she went out, she picked 4 different places, and on the fourth one, her and another team member wound up actually having a sighting out there. And she did all that from just listening to reports, uh, podcast, looking at maps, and putting all that together, and then taking it out in the field. That's another way that we can get to the bottom of this faster, is getting people that are really serious about it involved, and not be like, oh, well, I'm not. It doesn't take, a lot of times we're just sitting around a campfire, believe it or not. It gets a lot more complicated when you're looking for tracks and you're finding, discarded animals and trying to figure out the routes they take and all that. That gets a little complicated. But for the most part, if you're healthy and you've got some outdoor knowledge and you're motivated and you're willing to show up and put in the hard work, man, just about anybody can do this, with a little bit of common sense. But I think with some time, very confident we'll get to the bottom of it, or very close.
No, it sounds like you guys are well on the way. But we're running up out of time. So how about this? Tell everybody where they can get in contact with you, where they can find your Facebook group, if there's a YouTube channel where they can find, especially the documentary that you guys created, or the video footage of you guys going out to that location. That was very interesting. Tell my audience where they can find that if they want to take a look at it, and how they can support you if they choose to.
Really just go to our YouTube channel is the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. Probably the best thing to do is go to the playlist. I try to organize some of the most important stuff there, some of the best evidence there. Just go through all of it, because some of it might just me talking about something I found behind my house, and then some of it may be an actually really good thermal video. I put up a lot of videos because I do this a lot because it's at my house. So you may have to go through some things, but go through the playlist. Facebook, same thing. The Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. Our podcast is actually on pretty much all the podcast platforms. We try to do that once every month, once every 2 months, something like that. Try to stick to interviewing other researchers and people that we personally know, But that's pretty much it. I'm Jonny Two Bears on Facebook. Shouldn't be hard to find. It's actually got my face right next to the juvenile face in my profile picture. So that's pretty much it, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, one more question. Where'd you get the name Jonny Two Bears from?
That actually, when I first got started doing this, there was an older guy that had been doing this for a long time. And he told me that since you're doing this on your property, you don't want to use your real name. Well, my first name's Jonathan. Well, my wife and I went and got the 23andMe done. It's actually kind of funny because she bragged the whole time we were married that she was Native American.
Okay.
And we get all that back and come to find out she's not Native American at all, and I am. So we told the kids that, and we had some property about 45 minutes from my house that we went camping at and everything, and the kids were having fun with that information, and they were giving out Native American names, and mine was Chief Two Bears, is what my kids started calling me. So
that's a cool nickname, man.
Yeah, man. So I just using my first name and then Two Bears, and that's it.
Nah, that's
awesome.
Where that
came
your
from.
Kids contributed to it. That's cool, man. That's super
cool. Yeah, that was their idea.
Well, all right, buddy. I appreciate you joining me, man. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I need you guys to head on over. This is Bigfoot weekend. And I know you guys are getting slammed with a lot of content, but it's important that you go on over, subscribe, and show some love. And if you have any sightings in your area that you want to report, it sounds like their team has everything in order for them to take your sighting and catalog it. Like a lot of people call themselves researchers, and then I'll ask them, and I'll listen to them, or ask them, well, how do you keep up with the sightings? And they don't have anybody that catalogs things. So it's really important to understand and discern between who's actually a real researcher and people who proclaim to be researchers. And these guys have it all together. And I'm just excited that you joined me, brother. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk, man. And that's a big compliment, and I appreciate it.
Nah, man, you're more than welcome. We'll be doing more later, buddy. Trust me.
Sounds good.